Bitcoin is a concept bold and disruptive. It wasn't merely ahead of its time, but it slipped through time, arriving before the world even had the language to describe it. Although Satoshi offered more than code, more than a network, Bitcoin was new money, digital money, internet money, and still it is not just about money. What he unleashed was a question, a challenge buried in the open, for anyone willing to look past the obvious and confront how such an idea existed at all. The vision, the implementation, the purpose, all of it is laid out in the white paper. This is where it begins, and exactly what the system of trust has spent more than a decade resisting. The very system Bitcoin is rendering obsolete. The banks, the payment processors, the central banks, the endlessly inflating fiat currencies, the entire financial machine that is mired in stagnation. Today we revisit the word of Satoshi, words buried in old forums, mailing lists, and obscure archives. Through them, the intention becomes clear. You begin to see the purpose. We gathered early communications between cryptographers, developers, early adopters, and Satoshi himself, and shaped them into a single interview. Perhaps through this lens, Satoshi's true vision will come into sharper focus. Satoshi Nakamoto published the Bitcoin white paper on October 31, 2008, on the cryptographer's mailing list. Every previous attempt at creating digital money had ended in failure. Its release signaled a turning point, one that hinted at a future built on decentralized systems.
I've been working on a new electronic cash system that's fully peer-to-peer, with no trusted third party. The paper is available at www.bitcoin.org. The main properties: double spending is prevented with a peer-to-peer network. No mint or other trusted parties. Participants can be anonymous. New coins are made from Hashcash-style proof of work. The proof of work for new coin generation also powers the network to prevent double spending. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. Digital signatures provide part of the solution, but the main benefits are lost if a trusted third party is still required to prevent double spending. We propose a solution to the double spending problem using a peer-to-peer network. The network timestamps transactions by hashing them into an ongoing chain of hash-based proof of work, forming a record that cannot be changed without redoing the proof of work. The longest chain not only serves as proof of the sequence of events witnessed, but proof that it came from the largest pool of CPU power. As long as a majority of CPU power is controlled by nodes that are not cooperating to attack the network, they'll generate the longest chain and outpace attackers. The network itself requires minimal structure. Messages are broadcast on a best effort basis, and nodes can leave and rejoin the network at will, accepting the longest proof of work chain as proof of what happened while they were gone.
Within days of the white paper's release, several well-known cryptographers responded, among them Hal Finney. Although the project was still purely theoretical at that stage, Satoshi Nakamoto clearly articulated the reasoning behind Bitcoin and defended its technical design. Many contributors agreed that real judgment would only come once the code could be tested. The first public comment came from a respected yet anonymous cypherpunk, James A. Donald, who expressed skepticism about Bitcoin's ability to scale. This sparked a detailed exchange in which Satoshi answered multiple questions. Satoshi argued that scaling had already been accounted for, explaining that Bitcoin would not hit a practical scaling ceiling thanks to simplified payment verification, SPV, which allowed lightweight clients to verify transactions without storing the full blockchain.
We very, very much need such a system. But the way I understand your proposal, it does not seem to scale to the required size. For transferable proof-of-work tokens to have value, they must have monetary value. To have monetary value, they must be transferred within a very large network. For example, a file trading network akin to BitTorrent. To detect and reject a double spending event in a timely manner, one must have most past transactions of the coins in the transaction, which, naively implemented, requires each peer to have most past transactions, or most past transactions that occurred recently. If hundreds of millions of people are doing transactions, that is a lot of bandwidth. Each must know all, or a substantial part thereof.
Long before the network gets anywhere near as large as that, it would be safe for users to use simplified payment verification, Section 8, to check for double spending, which only requires having the chain of block headers, or about 12 kilobytes per day. Only people trying to create new coins would need to run network nodes. At first, most users would run network nodes, but as the network grows beyond a certain point, it would be left more and more to specialists with server farms of specialized hardware. A server farm would only need to have one node on the network, and the rest of the LAN connects with that one node. The bandwidth might not be as prohibitive as you think. A typical transaction would be about 400 bytes. Each transaction has to be broadcast twice, so let's say 1 kilobyte per transaction. Visa processed 37 billion transactions in financial year 2008, or an average of 100 million transactions per day. That many transactions would take 100 gigabyte of bandwidth, or the size of 12 DVD or 2 high-definition quality movies, or about $18 worth of bandwidth at current prices. If the network were to get that big, it would take several years, and by then, sending 2 HD movies over the internet would probably not seem like a big deal.
Hal Finney was the first person to run Bitcoin besides Satoshi, and one of the earliest contributors to the project. Hal Finney also entered this discussion and expressed his admiration for the idea. However, Hal also wanted to test the software himself and delve deep into the code before deciding.
Bitcoin seems to be a very promising idea. I like the idea of basing security on the assumption that the CPU power of honest participants outweighs that of the attacker. It is a very modern notion that exploits the power of the long tail. When Wikipedia started, I never thought it would work, but it has proven to be a great success for some of the same reasons. I also do think that there is potential value in a form of unforgeable token whose production rate is predictable and can't be influenced by corrupt parties. This would be more analogous to gold than to fiat currencies. Nick Szabo wrote many years ago about what he called bit gold, and this could be an implementation of that concept. There have also been proposals for building lightweight anonymous payment schemes on top of heavyweight non-anonymous systems, so Bitcoin could be leveraged to allow for anonymity even beyond the mechanisms discussed in the paper. The Bitcoin system turns out to be socially useful and valuable, so that node operators feel that they are making a beneficial contribution to the world by their efforts, similar to the various iHome computer projects where people volunteer their compute resources for good causes. In this case, it seems to me that simple altruism can suffice to keep the network running properly.
It's very attractive to the libertarian viewpoint if we can explain it properly. I'm better with code than with words, though.
No, it is very attractive to the libertarian if we can design a mechanism that will scale to the point of providing the benefits of rapidly irreversible payment, immune to political interference over the internet, to very large numbers of people. You have an outline and proposal for such a design, which is a big step forward, but the devil is in the little details. I really should provide a fleshed-out version of your proposal, rather than nagging you to fill out the blind spots.
I believe I've worked through all those little details over the last year and a half while coding it, and there were a lot of them. The functional details are not covered in the paper, but the source code is coming soon. I sent you the main files. Available by request at the moment. Full release soon.
Early Bitcoin contributor Ray Dillinger also stepped in with several questions regarding details about the structure of Bitcoin. On November 4th, Ray Dillinger responded to James Donald.
I think the real issue with this system is the market for Bitcoins. Computing proofs of work have no intrinsic value. We can have a limited supply curve, although the currency is inflationary at about 35%, as that's how much faster computers get annually. But there is no demand curve that intersects it at a positive price point. I know the same, lack of intrinsic value, can be said of fiat currencies. But an artificial demand for fiat currencies is created by, among other things, taxation and legal tender laws.
To compensate for increasing hardware speed and varying interest in running nodes over time, the proof of work difficulty is determined by a moving average targeting an average number of blocks per hour. If they're generated too fast, the difficulty increases. As computers get faster, and the total computing power applied to creating bitcoins increases, the difficulty increases proportionally to keep the total new production constant. Thus, it is known in advance how many new bitcoins will be created every year in the future. The fact that new coins are produced means the money supply increases by a planned amount, but this does not necessarily result in inflation. If the supply of money increases at the same rate that the number of people using it increases, prices remain stable. If it does not increase as fast as demand, there will be deflation, and early holders of money will see its value increase. Coins have to get initially distributed somehow, and a constant rate seems like the best formula.
Bitcoin had immediately found interested individuals from an important part of sophisticated computer engineers, the cypherpunks. Satoshi had also contacted Adam Back, who didn't seem that interested, and only appeared in Bitcoin scenes several years later again, when Bitcoin was in the news and the price was following the massive demand for peer-to-peer electronic cash. Satoshi Nakamoto also contacted Wei Dai after Adam Back mentioned B-money to him and eventually referenced him on the whitepaper as well. On January 3, 2009, Satoshi launched Bitcoin, and the entire network quietly came to life as the early users began downloading the software and mining the first blocks.
Announcing the release of Bitcoin, a new open-source peer-to-peer electronic cash system that's completely decentralized, with no central server or trusted parties. Users hold the crypto keys to their own money and transact directly with each other, with the help of the P2P network to check for double spending. Download. Unpack the files into a directory. Run Bitcoin exe. It automatically connects to other nodes. If you can keep a node running that accepts incoming connections, you'll really be helping the network a lot. You can get coins by getting someone to send you some, or turn on options. Generate coins to run a node and generate blocks. I made the proof of work difficulty ridiculously easy to start with, so for a little while in the beginning, a typical PC will be able to generate coins in just a few hours. It'll get a lot harder when competition makes the automatic adjustment drive up the difficulty. Generated coins must wait 120 blocks to mature before they can be spent. There are two ways to send money. If the recipient is online, you can enter their IP address and it will connect. Get a new public key and send the transaction with comments. If the recipient is not online, it is possible to send to their Bitcoin address, which is a hash of their public key that they give you. They'll receive the transaction the next time they connect and get the block it's in. This method has the disadvantage that no comment information is sent, and a bit of privacy may be lost if the address is used multiple times, but it is a useful alternative if both users can't be online at the same time, or the recipient can't receive incoming connections. Total circulation will be 21 million coins. It'll be distributed to network nodes when they make blocks, with the amount cut in half every 4 years. First 4 years, 10,500,000 coins. Next 4 years, 5,250,000 coins. Next 4 years, 2,625,000 coins. Next 4 years, 1,312,500 coins, etc. When that runs out, the system can support transaction fees if needed. It's based on open market competition, and there will probably always be nodes willing to process transactions for free. Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin.org.
Everyone following the cipher's mailing list could run Bitcoin themselves, although only a small number chose to do so in those early days. Still, within the following months, Bitcoin attracted dozens of new enthusiasts to its fledgling community. Satoshi soon created the new Bitcoin forum, Bitcoin Talk, and moved all discussions there. The forum was a beacon for developers, cryptography experts, and curious innovators, early adopters who shared a belief in the potential of a decentralized future. They contributed ideas and code and helped lay the foundation for what many believed would become the money of the future. Within just a year, the Bitcoin Talk forum had already become the best place to learn about Bitcoin. People were mining Bitcoin using their home computers, volunteers were contributing to the project in direct communication with Satoshi, and early attempts at building a financial bridge began to emerge, most notably the New Liberty Standard Exchange, which aimed to create a PayPal to Bitcoin ramp. The first price Bitcoin traded ever was about 1/10 of a penny, and it was another landmark moment for the community. However, the major moment for the project came shortly after, when Laszlo Hanyecz made history by purchasing 2 Papa John's pizzas for 10,000 BTC, marking the first real-world commercial transaction using Bitcoin. The community celebrated every small achievement. Interest was growing rapidly, and people from all different fields were becoming captivated by this new digital money. The excitement led to one big question. Was the moment everyone had been waiting for finally about to happen? Up until then, no form of money existed outside the traditional financial system. Everything, whether PayPal or any online payment service, was ultimately tied to banks. No currency had ever successfully bypassed the bank-connected payment system. The early adopters of Bitcoin understood this deeply, yet they held on to the hope that Bitcoin could change everything. In 2010, an intriguing exchange between Dan Larimer and Satoshi Nakamoto unfolded. That conversation later became emblematic, marking Bitcoin's history forever.
I am convinced that bandwidth, disk space, and computation time necessary to distribute and quote-unquote finalize a transaction will be prohibitively expensive for micropayments. Consider for a second that the current banking industry is unable to provide a reasonable micropayment solution that does not involve depositing a reasonable sum and only allowing a withdrawal after a reasonable sum has been accumulated. Besides, 10 minutes is too long to verify that payment is good. It needs to be as fast as swiping a credit card is today. Thus, we need bit banks that allow instant transfers among members and peer banks. Anyone can open a bit bank, but the system would, by necessity, operate on some level of trust. Transfers in and out of the banks and peer-to-peer would still be possible, but will be more costly. Thus, a bit bank could make money by enabling transfers cheaper and faster than the swarm, with the added risk of trusting the bank. A bank has to maintain trust to make money.
The current system where every user is a network node is not the intended configuration for large scale. That would be like every Usenet user runs their own NNTP server. The design supports letting users just be users. The more burden it is to run a node, the fewer nodes there will be. Those few nodes will be big server farms. The rest will be client nodes that only do transactions and don't generate. See the snack machine thread. I outline how a payment processor could verify payments well enough, actually really well, much lower fraud rate than credit cards, in something like 10 seconds or less. If you don't believe me or don't get it, I don't have time to try to convince you. Sorry.
Newcomers were eager to contribute, each bringing their own skills and passions. Many reached out to Satoshi directly, while others found their way through the guidance he offered on the forum. Even at this early stage, Satoshi had already taken on an almost iconic status, yet he remained fully engaged, always ready to respond, explain, and articulate Bitcoin's mission, vision, roadmap. And within the countless technical messages, the deeper theory behind the project was slowly coming into view. Bitcoin, the first true peer-to-peer cryptocurrency, was created to power commerce without intermediaries. Satoshi repeated the message every chance he got.
Would love to also see support for not having to supply and manage money. Would make it easier and cheaper to maintain, and results in have sufficient money, always and everywhere. No scarcity, no abundance, exactly the right amount all times, self-organizing.
First, you need normal, basic P2P currency working. Once that is established and proven out, dynamic smart money is an easy next step.
The last thing we need is to deploy a system designed to burn all available cycles, consuming electricity and generating carbon dioxide all over the internet, in order to produce amounts of bitbucks to get emails or spams through. Can't we just convert actual money in a bank account into bitbucks cheaply and without a carbon tax?
Ironic if we end up having to choose between economic liberty and conservation. Unfortunately, proof of work is the only solution I've found to make P2P cash work without a trusted third party. Even if I wasn't using it secondarily as a way to allocate the initial distribution of currency, proof of work is fundamental to coordinating the network and preventing double spending. If it did grow to consume significant energy, I think it would still be less wasteful than the labor and resource-intensive conventional banking activity that the billions in banking fees that pay for all those brick-and-mortar buildings, skyscrapers, and junk mail credit card offers.
During Bitcoin's earliest days, Satoshi Nakamoto alone steered developments and determined its future. He controlled the codebase, issued software updates, and refined the protocol, supported only by a small group of volunteers. Then, in October 2010, Satoshi made what would become one of the most consequential decisions in Bitcoin's history. Acting preemptively, he introduced an update that imposed a 1 megabyte limit on the size of each block, reducing them from unlimited capacity to a strict cap. The move was driven by concerns about potential network-crippling spam attacks, a threat Hal Finney had repeatedly warned about. According to Ray Dillinger, who later described their private conversations, Satoshi accepted Hal's suggestion, although all three of them, Satoshi, Hal, and Ray, considered the change only a temporary defense. The intention was clear. The block size should be raised once the network matured. In hindsight, this may have been the most dramatic intervention Satoshi ever made. This because the 1 megabyte limit never changed. Despite being meant as a short-term safeguard, it became permanent, shaping Bitcoin's destiny, constraining its capacity to scale, and undermining Satoshi's own vision that Bitcoin could serve as a global decentralized currency capable of supporting everyday commerce. What followed was one of the most pivotal debates in Bitcoin's history, unfolding across posts on the Bitcoin Talk forum and far beyond it. The community suddenly found itself confronting a decision with consequences that would echo for years. Here's the initial reaction and the way Satoshi himself stepped in to respond.
We should be able to at least match PayPal's average transaction rate.
We can phase in a change later if we get closer to needing it.
In my opinion, it's a marketing thing. It's tough to get people to buy into a system if the network is technically incapable of supporting high transaction rates.
Satoshi just said it can be changed, so technically the network is capable.
It is also an incompatible change, as you see.
No, it's incompatible if just a few people change their behavior. To roll out a change to the network, you need to get most of the clients understanding both the old and the new protocol. And then when you have a majority, you turn on the new protocol.
You just described a whole network upgrade. I'd call that an incompatible change. The effort to raise the transaction rate limit is the same as the effort to change the fundamental nature of Bitcoins. Convince the vast majority to upgrade.
It can be phased in, like if block number greater than 115,000, max block size equals larger limit. It can start being in versions way ahead, so by the time it reaches that block number and goes into effect, the older versions that don't have it are already obsolete. When we're near the cutoff block number, I can put an alert to old versions to make sure they know they have to upgrade.
If we upgrade now, we don't have to convince as much people later if the Bitcoin economy continues to grow.
I agree, especially since generators are both the source of blocks and votes in the network. Since a block restriction would allow generators to charge higher transaction fees, they might vote against an increase in the max size in the future.
In an email exchange with Bitcoin developer Mike Hearn, Satoshi explained how Bitcoin could scale infinitely and outperform every other payment network. Citing Moore's law, he argued that rapidly increasing computing power would easily support larger blocks and higher throughput, enabling Bitcoin to grow beyond Visa's capacity and become a major player in global commerce.
Hi Mike, I'm glad to answer any questions you have. If I get time, I ought to write an FAQ to supplement the paper. There is only one global chain. The existing Visa credit card network processes about 15 million internet purchases per day worldwide. Bitcoin can already scale much larger than that with existing hardware for a fraction of the cost. It never really hits a scale ceiling. If you're interested, I can go over the ways it would cope with extreme size. By Moore's law, we can expect hardware speed to be 10 times faster in 5 years and 100 times faster in 10. Even if Bitcoin grows at crazy adoption rates, I think computer speeds will stay ahead of the number of transactions. I don't anticipate that fees will be needed anytime soon, but if it becomes too burdensome to run a node, it is possible to run a node that only processes transactions that include a transaction fee. The owner of the node would decide the minimum fee they'll accept. Right now, such a node would get nothing because nobody includes a fee, but if enough nodes did that, then users would get faster acceptance if they include a fee, or slower if they don't. The fee the market would settle on should be minimal. If a node requires a higher fee, that node would be passing up all transactions with lower fees. It could do more volume and probably make more money by processing as many paying transactions as it can. The transition is not controlled by some human in charge of the system though, just individuals reacting on their own to market forces. Eventually, most nodes may be run by specialists with multiple GPU cards. For now, it's nice that anyone with a PC can play without worrying about what video card they have, and hopefully, it'll stay that way for a while. More computers are shipping with fairly decent GPUs these days, so maybe later we'll transition to that. My choice for the number of coins and distribution schedule was an educated guess. It was a difficult choice, because once the network is going, it's locked in, and we're stuck with it. I wanted to pick something that would make prices similar to existing currencies, but without knowing the future, that's very hard. I ended up picking something in the middle. If Bitcoin remains a small niche, it'll be worth less per unit than existing currencies. If you imagine it being used for some fraction of world commerce, then there's only going to be 21 million coins for the whole world, so it would be worth much more per unit. Satoshi Nakamoto.
By late 2010, Bitcoin was already becoming a topic of interest among Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, especially after Slashdot published its first article about it. Yet its first major wave of real-world adoption came from an unexpected source: WikiLeaks. With traditional financial channels blocked, WikiLeaks turned to Bitcoin as an alternative lifeline. Accepting Bitcoin allowed the group to bypass financial sanctions and continue operating. However, Satoshi Nakamoto was unhappy about this development. Satoshi had created a form of money that could operate outside the traditional financial system. But in the case of WikiLeaks, Bitcoin wasn't just bypassing banks, it was bypassing sanctions imposed by powerful nations. The implications were obvious. Sooner or later, those same powers could come after him.
Hey, I wanted to send a letter to WikiLeaks about Bitcoin since unfortunately they've had several incidents where their funds have been seized in the past. Anyone know where to send a message to them?
Engaging in WikiLeaks before Bitcoin has a chance to unfold its wings may kill it.
I suspect the first targets if Bitcoin got associated with WikiLeaks would not be miners or participants, but the money changers. People buying and selling Bitcoins for dollars and other currencies would be natural targets for shutting down. Without them, Bitcoin is back to being play money.
Basically, bring it on. Let's encourage WikiLeaks to use Bitcoins, and I'm willing to face any risk of fallout from that act.
No, don't bring it on. The project needs to grow gradually so the software can be strengthened along the way. I make this appeal to WikiLeaks not to try to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a small beta community in its infancy. You would not stand to get more than pocket change, and the heat you would bring would likely destroy us at this stage.
In the following days, WikiLeaks had already started accepting Bitcoin donations. It seemed like mass adoption was on the horizon, along with all the challenges that come with it. In one of his final posts on the Bitcoin forum, Satoshi wrote,
"It would have been nice to get this attention in any other context. WikiLeaks has kicked the hornet's nest, and the swarm is headed towards us."
And it did. However, Satoshi had already begun putting his exit plan into motion. 4 months later, in April 2011, Satoshi reached out to Mike Hearn in what would become his final communication.
I had a few things on my mind, as always. One is, are you planning on rejoining the community at some point? Example given for code reviews. Or is your plan to permanently step back from the limelight?
I've moved on to other things. It's in good hands with Gavin and everyone.
We'll probably never know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, and most likely the founder of Bitcoin never meant for things to end up this way. The world still needs a working Bitcoin, a digital currency with no intermediaries. Maybe one day we will all use universally accepted digital currencies, with fast transactions and insignificant fees. It could be something created by the banks, fully centralized, censorable, and controlled. Or it could be a cryptocurrency, completely free from intermediaries, used person to person, money that we control and no one else. The latter could usher in a new era of commerce and finance, boosting economies and empowering people everywhere, regardless of ethnicity, status, or politics. It would allow anyone, anywhere in the world, to hold at least a portion of their wealth in a sound, global money system, a system built to serve everyone, and not a privilege reserved for the few. Bitcoin today can still be used for various purposes and assist people in need, even if it isn't suited for everyday commerce. Those shaping the narrative have altered the vision and pushed the idea that Bitcoin is only digital gold. And still, that commerce gap was quickly filled by other cryptocurrencies, as well as by other versions of Bitcoin created through hard forks by Bitcoiners trying to maintain Satoshi's original ideas. Yes, real-world adoption in everyday commerce remains insignificant. Cryptocurrencies are still too complicated for the average person. The management of the private keys, the lack of education on transacting properly, the extreme volatility and price manipulation, and the unclear legislative global framework have all slowed the spread of permissionless money. But the hope is that we are still early. Cryptocurrencies will continue to evolve. Some of the brightest minds of our generation are working to make everything simpler and safer, paving the way for the rapid growth of true peer-to-peer electronic cash.